Hello everybody and welcome to Insider's Guide. Today we're discussing the tallest ski resort on the East Coast and host of the 1980 Winter Olympic Games, Whiteface. Whiteface's reputation nowadays particularly pertains to its weather patterns, but there's plenty in the actual skiing experience deserving of a deep dive, which is what we're doing today. For those of you who are new, in this series we share knowledge and tips with all of you to help you maximize your day skiing the fine resorts of the world. So with that, let's begin an Insider's Guide to Ski Resorts, Whiteface. Whiteface is located near Lake Placid, New York, and is a reasonable day trip driving distance from Albany, Plattsburgh, Burlington, and Montreal. It was a venue used for the downhill events in the 1980 Winter Olympics, and you can ski the runs that were used if you're good enough. I'll point them out throughout the video. As mentioned in the intro, Whiteface has the tallest vertical of any ski mountain on the East Coast. This makes for some long lift rides and runs. As also touched on in the intro, Whiteface has a reputation for being extremely brutally cold and pretty windy. This wind can make the upper mountain exceptionally icy, but also gives the glade some of the best off-piste snow quality you can find on the East Coast. But couple that weather, the vertical, and the slow fixed grip lift serving a lot of the mountain, and you're going to want a bunch of layers, hand warmers, and a stop in the lodges quite often. As far as lodges go, you've got one at Mid-Mountain, the Legacy Lodge, and one at each base area. Remarkably, despite them not being the largest lodges, they don't tend to get too terribly crowded. Which leads me into my next point. Whiteface has two base areas. The Bear Den Lodge on the looker's right side is where all beginners and learners should start their day. The base lodge on the looker's left side is where the gondola departs from and where experienced guests will probably want to start. Each base has its own parking lots that require a walk or short shuttle ride. If you want to park closer, you can pay $25 to park a lot closer in the base lodge. There is no premier parking option on the Bear Den side, but that side is where you'll find EV chargers. The signage on mountain is subpar in areas, in my opinion, which is why I'm here, to tell you all those little Whiteface-isms that can make or break your day. So with that, let's go ahead and switch over to the trail map and begin with the Bear Den side. The Bear Den area is relatively unique in that it's a true beginner learning area segregated from advanced traffic, which can be somewhat hard to come by at other East Coast mountains. For first-timers, you'll want to start at either the Cub or Coyote carpets. I prefer Cub, as Coyote is right in the middle of a more major run, while Cub is more segregated. After you're confident on the carpets, head over to the Falcon Flyer fixed grip quad. Off Falcon Flyer, you've got Flying Squirrel, which offers some beginner jumps, boxes, and even a mini pipe. Directly under the lift is Otter, which is the best run for learners in my opinion due to its width. Bobcat and Moose are the other main green groomers in this area, while runner-up, Bobcat Chute, and Coyote Cut are just roads going to Bear Den, and Moose Cut and Porcupine Pass are roads going to the base lodge. Also in this area are the Hoot Owl Glades and Bobcat Glades, both of which are super mellow, spaced out tree trails that can get quite thin coverage. Now, because of this great learning area, the Falcon Flyer can get some solid lines. If that's the case, almost always the notch detachable quad has significantly less of a build-up. If you're a relatively experienced skier, that being at least a full day of skiing experience before, you can head up the notch to its mid-station, denoted by the star here. From there, you can ski down Boreen to Bobcat to return to the Bear Den area, or continue down Boreen to the main base. At this big intersection, Bobcat appears as a small road to the left, while Boreen goes straight ahead. Brookside is fairly hidden from that intersection, but its entrance is quite visible immediately after you clear the intersection. Boreen and Brookside are both wide, mellow cruisers. Brookside is typically busier, so I actually prefer Boreen. Up at the top of the notch, if you don't unload at the mid-station, you can access Boreen Loop, which is an extremely mellow, albeit short, road through the trees that bypasses the narrowest, steepest, and busiest section of Boreen here. It's one of those ones where, unless you're actually on it, you'd never know it existed. Let's now jump over to the main base. When you arrive from the shuttle drop-off or from your walk, it will be much easier to access the Cloud Splitter gondola, as the facelift high-speed quad is a bit uphill from where you'll be. Sometimes that's alright, and you can go to the gondola. However, on windy days, the gondola can get some pretty big lines. The gondola has a fairly low capacity due to the fact that they don't fully load each cabin, and it's got unusually large cabin spacing. Facelift's lines are almost always significantly shorter than the gondolas, so if you see a big line at the gondola, it's a fairly sure bet to head to Facelift instead. If you're set on going to the summit of Little Whiteface Mountain, you can then go up the Little Whiteface double chair to access the same terrain the gondola would have given you access to. Your final option from the main base, a brief hike across the slope, is Warhorse, which serves access to the terrain parks along with Freeway. Freeway is fairly hidden, and when it's open to the public, it almost never has any line at all. Freeway also spins remarkably fast for a double chair, so despite its significant length, it moves along alright. If both the gondola and facelift are overwhelmed, Warhorse to Freeway isn't a bad option. Freeway has an option to unload midway at the Star here, which yields access to these blue cruisers. I particularly like Lower Parkway, as it goes somewhat around the side of the mountain and is nice and quiet. The rest of these fit with that theme as well, however. In the 1980 Olympics, the men's GS went down Lower Parkway and the women's went down Lower Thruway. Draper's Drop is often closed nowadays for race training. If you go up to the top, you can access Upper Parkway and Thruway, which are practically just one wide slope that's significantly steeper than the blues. Those two were used as the upper sections of the men's and ladies' GS, respectively. Calamity Lane and Low Road are both pretty much just roads, but you'll want to keep left on Low Road if you're trying to get to Legacy Lodge, as you won't then have to skate back up to it. The biggest and baddest run in this area is Mountain Run, which was used for the men's slalom in the 80 Olympics. It's a super wide run, and while steep, it gets a lot of care from the grooming team, which typically leaves it a slight bit less icy than other runs on this upper part of the mountain. We'll come back to the rest of these runs in a moment, but for now, let's jump up to the top of Facelift. Coming off of Facelift, you'll unload straight towards Summit. If you then turn right, you'll be on Easy Way to Easy Street, which is a nice mellow run. Upper Boreen is a little road through the trees that is frequented by snowmobiles. If you want to access Broadway, Off-Broadway, or Upper Valley, at the end of the fence you'll need to make a U-turn to the left and skate up just a bit. Upper Valley is my preferred run here, as Broadway seems busier. All of these runs drop you at the doorstep of Legacy Lodge, which is my go-to lunch spot. From there, Lower Valley is overwhelmingly the most popular option, with River Run, Lower Gap, and Danny's Bridge serving as alternates. Ladies Bridge and Valve House Road takes you from Boreen to Valley. Burton's runs in this direction, from Thruway as an emergency escape back to Legacy Lodge, but is exceptionally flat and even a bit uphill. Tomcat can be accessed from Valley and is a short road to cut over to the lowermost section of Parkway. From there, you can continue across to Parkway Exit, which takes you to the terrain parks. If you stay on Valley the whole way down, which is what I'd recommend, you'll end up on Fox or Fox Island, which are super wide, gentle green cruisers. Now let's pop back over to the little Whiteface runs. This map shows two separate lifts, Mountain Run and Little Whiteface, running in tandem on this lower section. At the time of recording, a brand new Little Whiteface double is in construction, while both of the old lifts have been removed. There's no new trail map yet, but just understand there's only one lift here, as Mountain Run is no longer there. While it's not 100% clear, I'm assuming the new double will have the same setup as the old, meaning you can unload Little Whiteface at the Star if you wish to just lap Mountain Run or access Parkway, Thruway, and the lower blues. After the mid-station, the Little Whiteface chair goes behind a ridge and is nicely shielded from the wind most of the time. As such, despite it being quite a long ride, it's typically not as brutal as some of the other upper mountain lifts. Approach is a windswept road that runs along the ridge back to Mountain Run, Thruway, and Parkway. Off of it, you first have access to Upper Northway, which is a nice black groomer. Cloud Splitter glades and Slide View glades are spaced out decently, but are quite steep. I don't believe their entrances are signed, so keep an eye out for a gate on your left as you head down Approach. Upper Empire is extremely narrow and often allowed to develop moguls. In my opinion, it would be a double black even in Colorado, so I'm not sure why it's only a single black. Nonetheless, it is one of the hardest runs outside of the slides on the whole mountain. Mackenzie and Wilderness are lower-ish priorities for the groomers, but they still try and keep them relatively smooth. Mackenzie is a bit narrower, so I prefer Wilderness of the two. Wild Way is a cut from the Mountain Run summit to Wilderness and nothing more. 2200 Road, I'm not really sure of its purpose. I guess to escape Mountain Run if you realize it's too hard and get to Lower Mackenzie. 1900 Road takes you all the way across to the valley, as you can see, so it is a much more suitable cop-out. However, while 2200 Road's entrance is signed on Mountain Run, 1900 Road's is not. The 10th Mountain Division glades and High Country glades are accessible from these lower blues and are paths through the trees that parallel the blues. They're not nearly as steep as Cloud Splitter and Slide View. Now, the most popular run off this summit is, by far, Excelsior. Just after Approach splits off, you can hit Essex, which they sometimes allow to develop moguls when conditions allow. If you skip that, then you're stuck on Excelsior, which is a fairly mellow road on its upper part. It then gets to this junction, which can be quite confusing. This is typed really weirdly due to font size on the map, so I'll explain it audibly with the visual here. First, you approach this four-way intersection. Excelsior comes in from the right and Perrins comes in from the left, and Ilmer's Alley exits left while Excelsior exits right. Next, you come to a four-way. Excelsior comes in from the right, Ilmer's Alley comes in from the left, and Excelsior exits to the middle with John's Bypass going to the left. As you can probably now tell, unlike the map shows, Ilmer's basically just shortcuts this first switchback of Excelsior. After this second intersection, Excelsior switches back and offers access to Lower Northway on the right. It then switches back again and offers access to Connector on the left. After that, Excelsior becomes a very fun twisting cruiser. It is quite popular, so while it is fun to do once or twice, when I am just trying to transit back to the top of Facelift, I prefer Northway. Northway is much straighter, but is just as mellow. Down below, Northway splits to Empire Cut, which goes to Lower Empire. If you stay on Northway, it crosses Excelsior and becomes Summit Express. If on Northway or Excelsior and intending to go to the Summit Lift, you'll need to take the Summit Express Trail. You can get to Lookout from any of these four blues here, but can only access Summit from Victoria or Summit Express. From those two, when you see the Facelift top terminal, be sure to stick to the left of it to get to the Summit Quad. The Summit Fixed Grip Quad is extremely slow, and thus is a long ride. It is also at the coldest part of the mountain and gets quite windy. It is often foggy at the top as well. All in all, this isn't my favorite area on the mountain. Riva Ridge is a narrow cat track that I hate due to the amount of traffic it carries. It then splits to the Follies, which is a fun, winding blue somewhat like Excelsior, and Perrin's Run, which goes straight down the ridgeline. By taking John's Bypass or Connector, you can access Victoria, which is a very nice blue cruiser, albeit somewhat busy due to being the runout for almost the entire pod. Skyward and Cloudspin to Niagara are the marquee big mountain groomers here. They're big, they're steep, and they're fairly long. The men's downhill in the 1980 Olympics started on Cloudspin and Niagara, while the women's was on Skyward. There are also these switchbacks and roads and whatnot in and around Cloud, but I don't recommend any of them. Over on the far looker's right side of the upper mountain, you have the Lookout Mountain Triple. This lift, similarly to Summit, is cold, slow, and long. However, it is one of my favorite lifts due to the trails it serves. Up at the top of the lift, be aware that this Porcupine Lodge warming hut is at the back of Lookout Loop. Lookout Loop is a road that you'll see directly ahead of you when you unload the lift. Hoyt's High is a super steep, super long cruiser. It gives access to Rand's Last Stand, which are some of the most difficult glades on the mountain, although they are fairly rarely open. And then, of course, you've got the Wilmington Trail, which is one of the longest trails on the East Coast. It's an absolutely fantastic groomer that just keeps going. Lower down, there are a few little rocks on the right side you can choose to hit, which offer some nice drops. It also offers access to these exceptionally long tree runs on the skier's left side. Aside from that, however, it's just you and the mountain and the few others who venture all the way up. Absolutely fantastic run. In years past, it wouldn't open until February, but it seems like the snowmaking strategy may have shifted as it opened in December for the 24-25 season. There is this Lookout Below offshoot of Wilmington Trail, which is super steep and also rather narrow. It is overall one of the more difficult on-piste runs at Whiteface. And then of course, you've got the slides. Unfortunately, I've never been lucky enough to make it when the slides are open. Take that to understand truly how rare it is for the slides to be open. However, there's enough publication out there for me to sum it up for you. The slides are a set of 5 natural chutes that are some of the most challenging terrain on the East Coast. They are extremely demanding of both skill and decision making, making them skiable only to the most capable skiers and boarders. They require a very deep base to open, so they often don't open until February or March and can close at the drop of a hat. When open, however, they offer a big mountain experience not rivaled anywhere else on the East Coast. Sometimes ski patrol will require a beacon, shovel, and probe. A partner is always required. The closer slides are a 5-minute hike from the top of Summit, with the further ones not much more than 10 minutes away. To learn more about the slides from Whiteface themselves, click the link in the description. Well, that about wraps it up for the Face. Now go check out one of our other Insider's Guides, breaking down premier ski resorts all around the world and the United States. As always, please leave any questions down below. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, please consider subscribing to help support this stream. Thank you all so much for watching. All my love, I'm out.